Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to it's been a long time since we've had a balanced living lecture, but on behalf of the Cincinnati Bar Association Health and Wellbeing Committee, I want to welcome you all this afternoon to the I really don't know how long it's been since we've done a balanced living lecture. We're very excited to have Ms. Nickell here to speak to us about managing holiday stress. But before we get to the content, let me just introduce myself and Mr. Bogan, who's right there on the screen. Say hi, James. We will be, and I think everyone's already got the memo that we're going to be off screen for the recording until or unless we have questions, and then we're able to pop back on. So just as a means of information or introduction, my name is Amy Kurlansky. I know you can see that on the screen, and I'm the current chair of the Health and Wellbeing Committee, and James is the vice chair. The committee was started, I can't believe it, but 10 years ago, I think this year, in order to facilitate wellness and a healthy lifestyle for attorneys in the Cincinnati area. So the Balanced Living Lectures are a keystone portion of that mission, and we want to encourage healthier habits and a healthy lifestyle for more civility and professionalism across the profession. Tabitha Hochscheid, our former chair and the creator of the committee, has a much better explanation for how this all came to be, and someday I'm going to steal it from her with her permission, of course. But as you know, some of the dim statistics about attorneys are that we have high rates of some very unhealthy behaviors. So again, the committee, in short, was created and designed to help facilitate much better habits so we can all be healthier, serve our clients better, because a healthy lawyer is a healthy advocate. And as we all know, to transition into today's topic, the holidays, well, allegedly the most cheerful time of the year, can also be one of the most stressful times of the year. And with that in mind, we want to welcome Ms. Nickell, who is, and I think I've got the whole thing correct, the Director of Sports Psychology at the University of Cincinnati Department of Athletics. And if I misspoke at all, then I am confident that she will correct that. Thank you, Ms. Nickell. We really appreciate you cramming one more thing in during this very busy season. I know you're working on school yourself as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to pop off screen. James, do you have anything to add before we pop off screen?
Go Bearcats.
All right. You heard him, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to pop off screen.
I was on the swim team, remember, so.
And Ms. Nickell, the floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Amy. So I am going to share my screen, and hopefully this is going to work. We're going to make sure that we're sharing sound, and of course it goes back through to.
We are seeing the slides, at least I am.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, because I do get.
You're very welcome.
Everyone on the side there. So as Amy mentioned, I am Lenecia Nickell, and I am the Director of Sports Psych and Wellness for the University of Cincinnati Athletics. I have been in this position for almost a year now, so I've been in Cincinnati for almost a year. Prior to that, I had a private practice in Texas. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor, licensed in Ohio, Texas, and Louisiana. And you can see the rest of all of that stuff there. So pretty busy person, but very much focused on the mental health, wellness, mental performance space in multiple aspects of my life. So very excited to be able to present to your group today, and want to encourage you, please ask questions. Amy's wonderful enough to volunteer to manage the chat if there are questions as we go through. So I'll do my best to make sure that I'm answering those. And then just to say, I'm sure that many of you have been to trainings like this before and have had personal experiences and reading about these specific topics and whatnot. And so it might be information that you've heard before. And also I'm open, again, to questions, or if there's any particular subject that want me to kind of elaborate on as I'm going through. So I compiled a brief amount of a lot of information for all of you today. And really my point, and it's been my initiative since I've gotten here to UC, is to start and keep conversations around mental health and wellness going. So that being said, so my focus here is to get into some statistics on mental health prevalence issues of specifically in the area, the time of the year for the profession, and signs and symptoms. So digging into some of those things, having coping strategies and providing resources. Also being mindful of time. To say this, I will try to be respectful of everyone's time, keep it within the hour. So I'm going to monitor and might skip over a couple of slides because I do want to get to some of the things that I have planned at the end. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll do that. So I'm going to jump right on in. As I was preparing for this hour-long presentation and looking into information specific to attorneys, I found the American Bar Association Wellbeing Pledge, which I thought was really interesting. Especially there's a 7-point plan that's very, very specific. I'd say even more specific than mental health professional organizations in being specific and directive in how to support membership and attorneys as they're going through. So just wanted to put that out there. I'm sure you've all seen it, but it was significant enough to me that I wanted to put it out there and have it in writing, focusing on health and well-being. So we'll jump right on in and talk about seasonal affective disorder. So a lot of times people call it the winter blues, and that we have it there as subclinical, but it's a real thing, right? A lot of people sometimes will kind of, well, it's just, but it is a real clinical mental health condition related to climate and weather changes, and we'll also say, light. So common at the change of seasons, and we're sharing similar symptoms with other depression diagnoses. You'll find that's common. We're going to go through 4 other very specific signs and symptomology for other diagnoses, and there's a lot of overlap. So I want to make sure to kind of point that out, that you can be dealing with multiple things at one time and then have seasonal affective disorder kind of come over the top and just add that extra little bit that might make things more difficult, clinically difficult to handle. So those with a history of other depressive disorder diagnosis are more likely to experience it. So if it's something, if mood disorders or things that you deal with in your day-to-day life, you might find that the time change and season change adds a little bit more to the severity of your symptoms. And it's estimated that 5% of adults in the US have experience with and deal with seasonal affective disorder. And again, the subclinical term is winter blues. So symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. So if you look at this list, and if you're familiar with, and we'll go over the list for depression and for anxiety, a lot of this falls in. What I find very interesting, the appetite changes and the carbohydrate cravings. And it makes me think about, holiday parties and gatherings that different groups and professional organizations, jobs will have, and how, at least in my observation, there's quite a few carbs available. So kind of leaning into that winter hibernation, grab those carbs, get in there, and then, in a more serious note, that it can become a more serious issue to deal with. Hypersomnia, so sleeping a lot, is something to look out for. These can be hard to identify, right? Because we see a lot of these behaviors as things that are just normal for the season, with, losing daylight hours and going into work when it's dark and leaving work when it's dark. And so you get home and you're like, okay, well, I guess it's time to get into bed, put on the PJs and go to bed. But looking at the totality of symptoms and recognizing behavior changes, not only for yourself, but for those around you. Then also looking at this list, the personal or family history of mood disorders places individuals at higher risk. So it's really important to be paying attention. If you have this, have these symptoms and you deal with them regularly, to be aware of where you are, to be introspective, to be observant of your own behaviors, how you're feeling, to recognize signs and symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. So typical issues in this, and other ways that you might kind of notice some things, is a reduction in physical activity. So that goes back to, as I was talking about, leaving when it's dark, coming home when it's dark. You come home, you eat dinner, and even though it might be 6:30, 7 o'clock, you're not getting into those regular physical activities. You're not as mobile as you might be during other months of the year, other seasons of the year. Also sleep disturbance, so that could lead to it, right? If you're going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock, that's a disturbance in your circadian rhythm, has a hard time. Definitely sleep plays a major role in our mental health and being able to combat some of the signs and symptoms and deal with things in healthy ways. And then vitamin D and the light exposure. So just kind of going, if you've ever seen on social media or anywhere on internet spaces that you're in where it says touch grass and get some sun, though it's said and almost cliche at this point, there's real research and real validity to getting outside, getting some vitamin D. Vitamin D helps the body process serotonin, and serotonin that's part of those feel good chemicals that we naturally produce. So very, very, very important and definitely impacted by the change of season and dealing with this. And focus on season right now, we're talking about holiday, but there are a large number of holidays that fall into this. So getting into this as one of the major components of how we take care of ourselves, how we notice signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, of clinical mental health symptoms, and move forward in taking care of ourselves and monitoring and being aware of the things that are going on for the people around us. So interestingly, and I guess it's also a very obvious thing, but to go areas experiencing the 4 seasons are the most affected by seasonal affective disorder. So I'll say anecdotally for myself, moving this far north, and it does get dark very, very fast here in Texas. We have a little bit more time to get home before it's dark. So having that as a very obvious and statistic that I felt needed to be, said out loud and acknowledged. The higher proportion of overcast days does not help with being able to combat these symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. And that 20 to 30% of the population has some experience with this, and it's that 5% that has a severe experience with diagnosable symptoms of this. And other research that I saw, again, like further away from the equator that you are, so affecting both hemispheres, which I never purposefully thought of or considered. So getting into, specific stressors and issues for attorneys, this is not, while we know anecdotally that mental health, well-being, substance use disorders are things that impact the population, it's not well studied. So the last major study that I found was in 1990, and between 1990 and then until about 2016 is when some studies started being done and published again, but between that time, there was not a lot of information. So knowing that this happens, but not really digging into what's going on for the population. What's remained consistent over the course of those studies are the percentages for the different diagnoses, and specifically the substance misuse problematic drinking has stayed very consistent. Other issues and stressors, kind of this general idea of attrition, going into those very specific parts of attrition. And interestingly, that rates of depression for attorneys are 3 times greater than the general population. And getting, can get into those reasons or those studied reasons and having that information, but also to go and say that these difficulties for the 2016 and 2021 study that I looked at, that they're showing that currently these issues are starting in law school. Whereas in 1990, they talked about it starting being for your more established professionals, and that those were the folks that were having issues with these stressors and having things show up mental health wise and substance use wise to an impactful or significant degree. So this research from 2016 and 2021 surveyed 12,500 members, and that's where this the figures come that talk about the difficulties starting in law school. So also leading to programs working to instill and provide mental health services and resources earlier on in program. So also in terms of age, and then also talking about differences in gender, that kind of overall you'll see, oh, it's more women, it's more men, speaking in binary terms, more women or more men, but different studies will have that flip. What I did find was consistent was that women tend to have higher incidence of alcohol use, and men higher incidence of substance use. So interesting to put out there. The most statistics, in going back and saying there's not been quite a lot of data done, but more statistics are done on alcohol use than mental health. And looking for comparative statistics, the data on physicians and medical personnel has their, with physicians and medical personnel, rates of alcohol use at 15% compared to 36% for attorneys. And talking about alcohol use and substance use as ways of coping, right? Negative coping skills when dealing with mental health issues. So again, this is pointing out early career. 80% of attorneys consider themselves current drinkers, which there's nothing wrong with being a drinker. Just a significant difference compared to 55% of the US population, and 30% of them discuss high risk hazardous drinking. So I'll circle back around to 2 points mentioned earlier. One is about the ABA pledge for well-being, and within their 7-step framework, they talk about reducing the socialized version of drinking, and also thinking about then too company parties, Christmas parties, and where that is, and the reducing the amount of normalized social drinking or high levels of that. So as a whole, the profession seems to be very aware of and moving towards and making very intentional strides. So just the last one there, talking about research and anxiety levels leading to problematic drinking and being higher among women, with a significantly greater proportion of men reporting current or former substance use. So we'll circle back around. So talking about seasonal affective disorder versus holiday depression. So I separate these out, and mentioned earlier that people will say the winter blues. Holiday depression, I separate out very specifically because of the activity that is generally associated with this season. So seasonal affective can go all the way into January or February, right? Those months where things are, where the weather, the overcast days, and things of that. Holiday depression, very specifically bracketed between those months of November and December that abate at the start of the new year. Causes for, and I want to highlight financial stressors, excess eating and alcohol, and grief. So for many people, that grief part can be many things, right? We grieve multiple things, and that the holiday season, for whatever it is we're grieving, when I discuss grief, there are always a lot of firsts in that first year, and there are firsts that come up, after that, and it impacts the intensity of holiday depression. Within that, you could have those who experience or move into more isolation and loneliness as a part of their grieving process, and or having unrealistic expectations. So thinking back, especially within the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, with dealing with COVID and that grief, and then moving forward through that grief and into the new way of living, or trying to return to previous ways of living, but all of it being new and contributing to mental health challenges. Okay, so we're going to go over a few diagnostic requirements. So how do we identify what we're going through, what someone we might know might be going through, because there are differences between experiencing a few symptoms and being clinically diagnosed or having clinically significant symptoms. So what that really entails is that when symptoms are at a clinical level, you are impacted not just, in 1 or 2 areas of your life, but in multiple areas. So at work, at home, in other responsibilities that you have, that you are experiencing challenges, changes, difficulties, and that's how we get to clinical. That's how we know that it might be time to seek out some extra assistance. So we'll go into depression signs and symptoms. And I like to point this out because while conversations on mental health have increased and knowledge and awareness have also increased, there are some things, sometimes terms, diagnoses, signs and symptoms get thrown around without specific and real information to go with it. And so putting out here, these are your most significant DSM-5 TR, so Clinical Diagnostic Manual of mental health disorders. These are your most significant ones. And I always like to bring up that there are 200 different permutations of significant experiences of these symptoms, which equals to over 10,000 unique profiles, different ways that people can be experiencing depression. So it's not just one way. It's not just that, you're having a problem getting out of bed or taking care of your ADLs, your daily living, your hygiene and things like that. It can look so different for so many people. And being aware of that, honoring that, being mindful and observant of that, both in ourselves and in others, to go, hey, maybe something's going on and it doesn't look exactly like you might think it looks, but these things are significant and worth paying attention to. So for anxiety, restlessness, easy fatigued, if you look at these, you're going to see some things and going, okay, wait, that was just on the previous slide. And they were. And that's why I mentioned earlier that we can have some overlap. And so it's being mindful in my own personal practice. My theoretical orientation is really based in cognitive behavioral therapy. And so getting into identifying cognitions and dealing with symptoms, and less so with diagnoses as a whole. So when you've got these overlap, we're looking at ways to engage with and work at reducing particular symptoms, versus going with a diagnosis as a whole and addressing it in that way. Both of these, both anxiety and depression, require a lengthy amount of time of experiencing these symptoms. So these full diagnosis requires 6 months of experiencing this. Going back, seasonal affective disorder, to actually know that you have that, you have to monitor it for 2 years to know that this is something that's going to be reoccurring. Want to highlight the sleep disturbance again, just to say that I cannot impress upon, I talk to everyone I meet about sleep and about how important it is, and about how we really, I'd say, I find it, adults, we really don't consider sleep in the ways that we probably should, or make time for sleep in the ways that we probably should. Here at UC, I make use of Aura rings with many of the student athletes. And if you're not familiar, an Aura ring it's another activity tracker, but they have great sleep tracking abilities. And the Aura ring actually, so I use one myself, and it tells me I have my bedtime set for 11 p.m. My Aura ring and the app gives me a notification at 8:30 that I should start getting ready for bed. 8:30. Just now getting into whatever it is I have to do at home. But it really brought home for me and helped me to be able to then reinforce to others that we cannot discount the importance of quality sleep in being able to have positive mental health. Alcohol use, signs and symptoms. So I have slides, alcohol use and substance use. They're very, very similar. And being able to identify these things, it can be, kind of difficult depending on social circles or things of that nature, family culture, that can seem, okay, well, that's pretty normal. But I'll draw your attention to impacting work, school, or home. That's the easiest way to go. Maybe we're looking at something clinical and getting into those types of things. And then substance use. So you'll see it's very similar. And at the end, we're talking about tolerance and withdrawal. So tolerance meaning, or specifically going into needing to engage with, use more of a substance that to be able to have the same desired effects, and withdrawal if you end up having physical symptoms from not using. And to say there are withdrawal symptoms for alcohol along with substance use, which is also, I would say, something that people really don't consider. If we're at these clinical levels of engagement with substance or alcohol, that there are withdrawal symptoms to look out for as well and be aware of. So if you find yourself dealing with any of this, and like I said, this is very high level and trying to move quickly to be respectful of time. I want to point out, it's not on this list, but to say for everyone that there is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number that we've got up there. We no longer need that. We only need 988. So we have a national number for mental health and substance crisis. So it's for both. It's not just for suicide. We are mental health and substance, 988. The resources that you have will vary from region to region, city to city, but we do have a universal 3-digit number now for that. So I always like to put these out there so that people know, and I can provide these resources at the end if anybody needs them. I'd also say this is, I think these are all specific to Hamilton County, that the mental health first aid website has a listing for that's specific to every county in Ohio. So I have those resources available as well if we need them. So non-emergent support. So this is where I kind of get into and move into how to seek out help, which is very, very important. So we're talking about staying healthy for the holidays. And this might be a time where you recognize that you're needing help, but oh no, I don't know where to look, or that's really not feasible for me right now. And so I point out, I'll go out of order here to say EAP programs. If you are working for a company and have structured insurance, the EAP programs are usually offered as part of your benefits package. And EAPs are anywhere from 3 to, I think the most I saw in practice was 8 free sessions with a therapist to discuss any mental health challenges that you may be experiencing. And then going back up from there, so NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, there's NAMI chapters everywhere that are specific to your city and region. And these will have peer support groups, which are very, very important, right? So that you can know that you're not alone, which sound, it's another cliche, but cliches exist for a reason. So NAMI is a great place to look for yourself. And also if you have any family, loved ones that are might be dealing with mental health challenges and you're looking for support on how to support them or how to deal with it yourself, NAMI is a great place to start to find those groups, those peer support groups to get into. BetterHelp is one of the more popular, larger online therapy options. They offer text, they offer video, and if you still have if you're still corded with your cable, they're advertising and getting information out there to encourage conversations on mental health and seeking out help, meeting with a therapist, and going that way. And then if you're just looking for, specifically looking for a therapist and looking to start treatment, Psychology Today is a great place to start. And you can get in there and search by very specific criteria to find a psychologists, marriage and family therapists, clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors. So you have all mental health professionals available on there that can help you out in taking care of your mental health. Want to go in and say there are many, many 12-step programs. So it's not just AA or NA. There's overeaters that I've heard of as well. And then all the support programs for family and loved ones there. Online forums. Online forums can be great in helping to find community. I also encourage people to be very careful in the online forums, as not all the information is coming from a professional. And so might not be completely accurate. And I am one that's more about getting the conversation rolling. And if we can go from there and then get in touch with professionals, I'm all for it. Okay, so coping. And this is the part that I really wanted to get to, and I think I'm doing okay on time. So it's very, very important to be alert to your own signs of stress. And I think that's something that we lose sight of, especially in our society where we're fast-paced and we're moving, especially in your profession, once again, fast-paced and moving, to be alert to your own signs of stress. And so maybe to sit down and take some time to go, do I even know what it looks like when I'm stressed, or is that just my baseline and I consider everything normal? Developing healthy coping strategies goes with that self-care plan. And we're going to just get into that a little bit more. Seeking professional help when needed. I know that that can be difficult. And that's something that is crucial to being able to move forward and remain healthy. Being alert to your own signs of stress and seeking help when you need it. Getting into these self-care plans. So what is self-care? Because that's a buzzword now too, right? If we're going in and it's all over Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, self-care day. Self-care is more than brunch and massages and those kinds of things, right? It can be that, but they're also variable and very specific to an individual person. So we've got some lists down there, and I always like to talk about my own self-care options and plan versus, some other folks. So for example, I'm very tactile. I like to do things with my hands. People who run for self-care fascinate me. because that's just not something I'm going to go out and do. I would rather be in a gym yelling at people and doing burpees than going out into the world and running. But that's just the very specific example of it's variable and person specific. So finding those things that work for you to lift your mood and provide some stress relief for you, those are things that are part of your self-care plan. And now if that includes brunch, mimosas, massages, that's great. And it's important to have a toolbox. So having 1, 2, or 3 things is just not enough. To value yourself, your time, to go, I have multiple options so that I am fully and effectively taking care of myself. And like many therapists, I use the oxygen mask on an airplane. We've got to take care of ourselves before we can take care of other people, because if we're half doing it, then we're not giving our best. We're not able to be our best for ourselves or for others. So as I am kind of rounding in, because I want to leave a little bit of time for questions if we have them, wanted to talk about 2 things, well, 3 things. We're going to do some diaphragmatic breathing. I'm going to talk about some other resources, and then we're going to end up with a guided imagery exercise. So if you've never done diaphragmatic breathing, while you're sitting in your chair, I want you to get comfortable, reset your shoulder posture, put your shoulder blades kind of in your back pockets, so to speak. I want you to put one hand over your chest and one on your belly. Diaphragmatic breathing is, for most people, counterintuitive. Number one, we don't really think about how we breathe. And number 2, it's counterintuitive to how you're going about your day-to-day. So one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, and diaphragmatic breathing, you're pushing your belly out on the inhale, filling up your belly as if it's a balloon. So that's a full push out. And then when you exhale, you're deflating that balloon. So give that a try a couple of times. So inhale and push that belly all the way out. Yes, your chest is going to rise, but you're filling up that balloon. So you should feel it all the way down to the bottom of your stomach. And then exhale and fully deflating that balloon. And benefits of this are that you're actually using your lungs to their full capacity, because we use them at about 50% capacity in our day-to-day. Diaphragmatic breathing, it's also called belly breathing in some spaces, helps to reduce your heart rate and reduce your blood pressure. So if you're dealing with anxiety symptoms, a lot of times those physical symptoms include heart rate and high blood pressure. And so diaphragmatic breathing is going to help you. You get into that, you're helping to reset that heart rate, and it aids in relaxation, and can also have a positive impact on certain breathing conditions. I see in the chat, a little dizzy. Yes, it is definitely more oxygen, right? So things that we are not used to doing, but getting into that so that we can have those positive impacts. I'd also say, so from taking off my therapist hat and putting on my fitness instructor hat, we have horrible posture as a society. We all spend most of our time here or sitting, and when we sit, we push back into our back. So the core support, our core muscles, are a bit weak compared to our back muscles. That impacts the amount of air that we take in and impacts our oxygen intake. So working to balance that stuff out, and we're gonna, when you're practicing this diaphragmatic breathing, we're going 4-4-8. So in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8. And getting into that. So again, very specifically to reduce anxiety symptoms is the focus that I'm on for these. Another way to practice this, so we're practicing it seated, but another way to practice it is laying down, because that's another way, so you're having your back flat on the ground so that you can feel that difference of having your belly out and belly in. If you practice it laying down, please be very careful when you get up so that we're not passing out in the middle of the room. So this gift is something that I love to use in terms of diaphragmatic breathing, because it is reinforcing taking that time to go ahead and fully inflate your belly and then fully all the way exhale. And we know that information sinks in when we have when we're hitting multiple senses at a time. So you have this visual to go ahead and help with what you're getting into. So next, I was fortunate enough to broker to participate in brokering a deal with the Calm app for UC. Humble brag, I'm very, very, very proud of this because it is a fantastic early intervention wellness tool. And so I encourage people, I don't get paid for it. There's no compensation, but to say, if you've not used it before, the Calm app is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And there's something in it for everybody. So I don't use Calm for everything. I love the sleep sounds. So if you ever go in, and actually I'm going to stop my sharing and switch here really quickly.
And there are a couple, while you do that, there are a couple of shout outs to Calm, like Mary Beth said she loves Calm. I do too. I love the daily exercises. So.
Okay, give me just a second because it logged me out.
And it looks like Hannah uses Halo Amazon Sleep Meditation.
Okay, that's one I am not completely familiar with, but I definitely look at things, at new stuff. So I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. I've got the sound shared. I'll turn it up a little bit. I just love that as soon as you log on to Calm, you've got some nice relaxing sounds in the back. I put this out there because if you look on the left side, it's got meditations, it's got sleep stories, it's got music for work, wisdom, calm kids. There's also breathe. So that gift that I showed, they also have breathing exercises in there as well. And like I said, not every part is for everyone. I use the sounds mostly when I'm traveling for hotel noise, to be honest. But there's a lot of stuff in there. And so I encourage folks to, there are free apps as well that include like Insight Timer. Headspace is another app. It's a paid app. But to find these things that can help in focusing inward and getting back to that self-care component. Self-care doesn't always have to cost money, right? We can go in and find things that we can do for ourselves. So these early intervention tools are amazing. Also, I am a big proponent of YouTube University. And so if we get in there and find there are meditations all over YouTube, there are also some fantastic bilateral stimulation audio tools that you can use, soundtracks. There's one that I encourage people to use that's a 10-hour thing. You don't have to use it for 10 hours, but to go and bilateral stimulation comes out of EMDR, which is a pretty major movement in anxiety and trauma treatment in mental health circles at the moment. And I can dig into that if anybody wants to know, but there are so many free tools at hand. So just want to encourage everyone to get into that. So really, really quickly, as we wrap up, I want to do this quick guided imagery to finish out our time together today. And so if you've not done a guided imagery exercise before, we're just going to get very comfortable where we are in our chair, getting as comfortable as possible. And I want you to close your eyes and really tune into your body and which parts of your body are feeling tense and which parts of your body are feeling relaxed. Take a few deep breaths in, taking in the air through your nose, holding it momentarily, and then slowly exhaling through your nose. And with each exhale, you'll find yourself relaxing more and more deeply and more completely. Take the air in, let it out, allowing yourself to relax. In a few moments, I'm going to describe a very vivid scene in which you'll picture yourself walking along a beach. I want you to imagine this scene as though you are there experiencing not only the sights, but the sounds, smells, taste, and touch. A bright summer day, it's late in the day, and you decide to go for a walk along the beach. The sun is radiating warmth and comfort as it shines boldly. The sky is crystal clear without a cloud in sight. The grains of sand beneath your feet shine from sunlight and warm the soles of your feet. The sound of the waves beating against the shore echoes in the air. You feel the warm, light breeze brush against your face. And far off in the distance, you can hear the cries of seagulls. You watch them glide through the sky, down into the sea, and fly off once again. As you walk further along the shore, you decide to rest. You sit down on a mound of pure white sand and gaze out at the sea, staring intently at the rhythmic, methodical motion of the waves rolling onto shore. Each wave breaks against the coast, rises slowly upward along the beach, leaving an aura of white foam, and then slowly retreats back out to sea, only to be replaced by another wave that crashes against the shore, works its way up the beach, and then slowly retreats back out to sea. With each motion of the wave as it glides in and as it glides out, you find yourself feeling more and more relaxed, more and more calm, more and more serene. The waves are gliding in and out, and you continue to watch this movement of the waves. As you stare off into the distance, the sun is beginning to sink into the horizon, and it's sinking, and you feel more and more relaxed as you see its movement go down, down, down. The sky is turning brilliant colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, as the sun sets, sinking down into the horizon. You feel relaxed and smooth. The beating of the waves, the smell and taste of the sea, the salt, the cries of the gulls, the warmth against your body. All of these sights, sounds, smells, leave you feeling very soothed, very calm, very relaxed. In a few moments, I will count from 1 to 3. And when I reach the count of 3, you'll open your eyes, take a deep breath, and feel completely refreshed and relaxed. 1, 2, and 3. So that is my presentation that I have for you all today. I want to thank you for staying with me through the imagery. And hopefully that's a tool that you can call upon and use as you are going through. You have a tangible takeaway from today as you're dealing with your holiday stresses and working to be self-aware and take care of yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. There's already thank yous coming in the chat. Like, I can't thank you enough. I know I personally feel super calm now. Of course, I want to be on a boat on that water, but that's, thank you so much. Most of the comments in the chat are more comments thanking you for such an excellent presentation as opposed to questions. The one thing I will say, and I know we're at 1 o'clock, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. And oh, by the way, Hannah is saying, yes, we can always take a walk down by the river. And I don't know about anyone else, but during the summer and early fall, I participated in the Parks Board's challenge and discovered some parks that are down by the river, which were amazing to walk through as the leaves changed colors. So I think that was a free challenge. And again, it's Hamilton County Parks. So they're doing like a winter hiking challenge, which is a slightly different structure. But anyway, so that was my tangent since Hannah mentioned the river. But yes, there are some amazing parks that we have in the area down by the water. I think one of my questions, I was surprised, I think, at the alcoholism statistics. And I know everybody knows that we have mandatory CLEs on, prevention of those substance abuses and how to deal with them. So that was a surprisingly high statistic, actually. I don't think in all my years of attending CLEs, and I know we're not getting credit for today in that same way, but like, I've never heard that statistic quite so high. It was a little bit surprising.
It was interesting to me because it was repeated in multiple articles that I found. I was not really expecting to have that information come about, but it was in multiple of the more recent articles. That was a repeated statistic across them all.
Well, and it's also interesting, and again, I will be mindful of everyone's time, so I understand if people do need to drop off. I have a couple of extra minutes if you do. But you said the report was from pre-2020, like so it's not even pandemic related. That is pre-pandemic drinking, for lack of a better way to say that sentence.
Definitely.
I had a better way to say that sentence.
I don't know that any of us have figured out how to term things pre-pandemic. Like, how do we phrase that? Yeah, only one from 21. That's all I was able to grab. That was as specific as I was looking for.
That's amazing. And again, sleep, someone had proposed a program for the beginning of the year for the Wellbeing Committee, Health and Wellbeing Committee to do on sleep issues. And I know that's such a huge issue. I know I'll overshare, but we're in a safe space, even if this is on YouTube for the rest of the bar to watch later. Like, I know when you've got those activities, it's easy to cheat sleep. And we've been conditioned as I think a culture, correct me if I'm mistaken, to cheat the sleep.
I'll actually let you in on this little thing. I actually have to use a CPAP.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot more people needing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people used to simplify as, oh, it's just snoring, not realizing that the source of the snoring is something more serious. I mean, I might not look it, but that had been affecting my blood pressure and everything else.
And I'll put you back on. I can put you on camera if you'd like. Hold on.
Nah, well, you can if you want. Yeah, sure, why not?
So one of the things that I bring up for most folks is if you think back to when you were elementary aged and what bedtime looked like. And most of us had a bedtime, routine that we engaged in that started as early as, so I mentioned the Aura ring and telling me to start hours ahead of time. You start bedtime early when you're a kid, and we move away from that and get to the point as adults where we're like, oh, I should be able to just put my phone down and go right to sleep. Well, if your body's not prepared, if you are overstimulated, if you are not in a state of relaxation to get yourself to sleep, how do you expect yourself to then have restful and meaningful sleep? So I end up really encouraging people. I know we use our phones for alarms and whatnot, make sure you don't have it in the bed, turn it face down so the alerts don't, pop up in the middle of the night and happen to wake you up if you're a light sleeper, but truly assess what your sleep hygiene is. What is that routine? And if you don't have a routine, it might be a good idea to start getting into, okay, I'm going to do this, and something beyond, okay, I brush my teeth, I wash my face, and I go to bed.
That was one of the other pieces of information that was remarkable. Like, to think that the Aura ring tells you, okay, you're getting ready at 8:30 for an 11 o'clock bedtime. 8:30. I mean, I don't know about anyone else on this call, but I know I've worked past, not at the library. For the record, I don't work at the library past 8 o'clock when I was working in private practice and in some of my other legal positions, direct client care legal positions, I should say. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock was early. 8 o'clock was early, 9 or 10 was a little bit later. Like, to push it past, way past 8:30 and still be working, let alone eating dinner or having gone to the gym. All of which for me happened in those later hours. Like, I never, 2.5 hours? Wait, I went to law school, so I wouldn't have to do math. 10:30 minus, or 10 or 11 minus 8:30. what is that? That's 2.5 hours, I think, isn't
We're
it?
getting close to 3.
Close to 3 hours of prep time, like that never happened.
Right. And so that's why I find that referencing when we're kids is the closest that people get to really conceptualizing how much time you could be spending really focused on taking care of that aspect of self-care and health and sleep hygiene.
That reminds me too, regarding the breathing. I took a lot of people on the call know that I have a background in theater. And so I took an adult workshop a few years ago, and they taught us some of those same breathing techniques with the added point of babies already do this. If you watch how a baby breathes, their stomach raises when they breathe. So babies know it, and then we're taught to suck in our gut and we lose that ability. But naturally we do have it if we can tap back into it.
Yeah.
So I'm monitoring the chat, and I cannot thank you enough, Ms. Nickell. I mentioned in the email to a number of people who are on the committee, and I would recommend if you are, and I know a lot of people here today are also on the LRIR, which is the Legal Research Committee of the CBA. So thank you, LRIR, for showing up. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone for being here today. I cannot thank you enough. This is such valuable information, and we really need it. So I think, as I was about to say, I mentioned in the emails to a few people, we are hoping to work with Ms. Nickell to put on a longer series of programs, possibly for CLEs. We're hoping for CLEs, fingers crossed, in the spring. So please keep your eye open for that. And James and I will be working out our schedule. We've been trying to do meetings every other month. In the past, the committee met monthly. So we're going to talk about what committee meetings are going to look like in the future. But again, so in addition to committee meetings, we are so glad to have the Balanced Living Lecture Series back. If it's on Zoom, if it's in person, all of that is sort of in progress. And as I said, we're working on the much longer series that will hopefully be for CLEs. So does anyone have any last minute questions before I let everybody go? And again, thank you all for staying a little bit past 1. And I think I mentioned this, but in case I didn't, hopefully I recorded this correctly and we'll have it up on YouTube for everybody. I don't see any more comments in the chat. Lisa, on behalf of the CBA, do you have anything I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You weren't expecting that, I know, but did you have anything you wanted to let us know before we sign off?
No, just thanks for being here. Happy holidays, everyone. And if you need CLE, you know where to come.
Absolutely.
Have
The
a great
CBA
day.
sent out an email today with a lot of CLEs, and also on behalf of the Law Library, we have some as well for our subscribers, so feel free to check those out. That aside, Ms. Nickell, do you want to leave us with any last minute words of wisdom? And again, my enduring thank you. I know how busy this season is for you with finals and everything. Thank you so much.
Yes, no, thank you for being a great audience, and take care of yourselves through this season, and enjoy and relax in the ways that you need to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, all right, everybody. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, bye everybody.
We'll see you in 2023. Yay!